Good morning, everyone. I'm Colette Carroll. I run Atkins Reality's transportation business here in the UK and Ireland. And I'm delighted that we're going to be joined by Mayor Burnham, who's going to talk to us about the last decade of transport-led growth and what's to come next. And I've got two thank yous for Andy. One is for coming to talk to us today at Interchange. But the second one is I was with my mum on Monday in Gatley, and she said, if you see Andy, say thank you. And the thing she wanted to say thank you for was what you've done with the bus fares, because she's 85 and she can now get out even earlier with the bus fare structure. So why do I share that story? Because local decisions that help local people live great lives is what devolution and transport-led growth can get you to. And Andy is going to just wow you, not with just what he's done, but what comes next. So thank you, Andy.
No worries, Colette. God, I've got to wow you. This is pressure. Morning, everybody. It's a happy morning. Everton won, Liverpool lost in the last minute. We like that in Manchester as well as down there. But welcome to this city, this great city, sunny Manchester this morning. We're fresh from the Brits, a successful Brit Awards on Saturday night. We've regained our crown as Party Central in the UK since Boris and 10 Downing Street took it in the pandemic. So we're back in business, we're firing on all cylinders, and we have had a decade of transport-led growth. And I just want to talk to you about that and the insights we've got from it and what it means nationally as we go forward as well when it comes to transport policy and transport funding. So in terms of where we are right now, I hate to say it, because there may be other mayors in the room ready to speak. We are the fastest growing city region in the UK, and we have been for some time. Double the rate of UK growth, 3.1% average growth over a decade. We have an economy in Greater Manchester that's just gone through the £100 billion mark, a £100 billion economy. We've just gone over 3 million population, so we're growing in population as well. And it's no coincidence, obviously, that we have the largest light rail system in the UK, one of the biggest in Europe. You know, that has been, if you like, the foundation for Manchester's growth in the modern era. I obviously oversee the B network, and the success story continues. We've just had a January where we had a record month, record January on Metrolink, 3.7 million passengers. January 2026, up by 6% bus patronage on January 2025. The Starling bike hire scheme, massive increase in use year on year. So this is what's happening. You know, we have a growing city region that has very much had, if you like, public transport at the heart of it. And it's different, isn't it? You know, roads get help with growth, but actually public transport, I think, gets what we call here in Greater Manchester, good growth. And it goes back to Colette's mum. Good growth is about everybody being able to feel the benefits of a growing city region. Everybody being able to connect to the places where there are the most good jobs, at Media City or here in the city centre. All communities, if you like, able to tap into the growth that we've got. So that's why, you know, public transport has got to be the priority. It does allow for growth in people and growth in places. Just to pick up on what Colette was saying, you know, this Sunday, just gone actually, we removed the 9:30 restriction from older and disabled people's bus passes. Now, you might think, in the great scheme of things, that's like a small thing, but actually it isn't to Colette's mum and thousands of older people across Greater Manchester. It's massive, actually, to say to them you can travel whenever you want. It means hospital appointments are more likely to be kept. There's huge benefits for the health service. People who look after their grandkids can get there without having to pay, and that's obviously an important thing. I said to them, we had a celebration event here in the city centre on Friday to celebrate the removal of the 9:30 rule. And one of the calls came up from the older people who were there with us, from the older people's panel in Greater Manchester was, yeah, but now you've got to get all the pubs open at 8:30 a.m. in Greater Manchester. And I said, okay, I'll work on that one. But yeah, it's about life, isn't it? And people enjoying life and living life to the full. But that does help the economy, and it does build good growth across the city region. The other example I would give would be what we do with our free bus pass for 16 to 18s. That isn't so much a transport policy as an education policy or an aspiration policy. You know, if you use public transport like that, it's the foundation for other policies, if you like, in terms of other social policies that bring huge benefits, and particularly to young people who can go anywhere in Greater Manchester to further their life at 16 with no worry at all about the cost. So that's what we're doing. We're using transport to build a growing city region. And in terms of the growth of places, it's not just transport alone. It's transport at the heart of devolution and that wider set of powers. For those of you still in parts of the country that don't have it, it's the ability to put transport at the heart of placemaking or place shaping, where you kind of bring together the housing plan with the green space, the active travel infrastructure. You create livability in places. It puts the kind of quality back in to places that perhaps have been neglected. The best example I can give is Stockport, where a number of years ago we launched a mayoral development corporation under the leadership of the late and very great Sir Bob Kerslake, who put forward a blueprint for Stockport that was basically transport-led regeneration, a brand new interchange, Metrolink ready to be able to take the tram when we bring it to Stockport, as we will in the next few years, but also obviously ready to be a flagship for the B network, an all-electric bus service that will soon be operating out of Stockport interchange, a new green space on the top of it, homes built around it, building homes for public transport rather than building homes for the car. That's a bit of an alien concept in this country, or it has been for a long time. But imagine if we were doing that all over the country through devolution. This is good growth. And actually, we would say this is how you put the heart back into places that have struggled in recent times. So the Stockport model is soon going to Ashton, to Stalybridge, to Middleton, to Bolton, where we're going to have mayoral development corporations there in the coming time. The point I'm going to get to is, if you ask any mayor who's here today, or indeed any councillor probably, they will implicitly understand what I've just said and completely agree with it and be doing versions of the same where they are. But my question is, does Whitehall understand the critical importance of transport to a growing economy? And I, in my almost decade as Mayor of Greater Manchester, would have to say to you, no, I don't think it does. I don't think it does. It doesn't start by saying, how can this transport scheme maximise growth? It often starts by saying, how can we get away with spending as little money as possible on this thing? Or how can we get away with not doing it at all? And that's often been the experience of people across the English regions when you look at the disparity in transport infrastructure between here and the southeast. Because that's the mentality that we've had. It's the mentality that got to a position where we spent billions of pounds building a tunnel under fields in the Chilterns, complete with a bat house as well, but then resisted building an underground station in the fastest growing city region in the UK, and they've resisted that for 10 years. Now, make that make sense to me. Can anybody do that? Can anybody tell me how that is good transport prioritisation and a pro-growth approach to transport? It's the opposite. And this is what I would say needs to change. You know, we're glad, actually, though, that the change is beginning to come through. Recently, there was an announcement about Northern Powerhouse Rail. And we still are fighting this argument about whether Manchester Piccadilly would be built as a surface station, which is what Whitehall wants to do, because it's cheaper to build a surface station in Manchester, or can we persuade them to build a modern underground station of the kind you would find in Germany or in the Netherlands, or you know the type of station where it's on layers and then you have all of that economic land preserved for development around it. You could have a King's Cross of the North here in Manchester if you built it in that way. We're still stuck in this argument, but we had a breakthrough recently where we signed an MOU with the Transport Secretary. But the critical thing that we persuaded the government finally, I mean, it's good that this government has accepted it, is the question should be, what is the configuration for Manchester Piccadilly that maximises growth in the economy? And that is in the MOU, and that is now a piece of work that Vernon Everett is involved in, our Transport Commissioner is now involved in with the government to get finally to the answer. But surely the answer has to be what delivers most growth for people, places, this great city region, for UK PLC. And we need to think of transport funding like that. For me, transport funding should be like a protected department in Whitehall. You cannot have the growth without it. You've got to have the capital and the revenue funding protected to allow city regions like this to be everything they can be. And it does kind of go really to the heart of how this country has been run. And I'll finish on this point. Before devolution, Whitehall had no ambition for the city regions of the UK. There wasn't a stated aim about what Greater Manchester would be. It just let deindustrialisation happen and then didn't replace it with a new ambition. And that's where we were for a long time, until this city decided itself to challenge that and to pick itself up and to start the revival of modern Manchester. We set the ambition. People before me set the ambition and made this place a place that wanted to be something again. Whitehall didn't set that ambition. We set it. We got the growth going here in Greater Manchester to a point now where it's at. We have to have an approach in this country where we're enabling the same across all of the country. And that growth only comes with the most ambitious approach to transport infrastructure. It's a long-term investment in UK PLC, in the size of our economy. If we'd let them build a surface station, and to be honest, we will never accept it here in the city, never. I say that to anybody from the rail industry. We will never have a surface station at Manchester Piccadilly. Why? There's a simple answer. To do that would be permanently to put a ceiling on the size of our economy. It would be to say, we are not letting this economy grow beyond what we are determining. If you give us the right solution, then we'll have permanently a bigger economy in this city region. And that is why we will always hold out for what we think is right. We have higher ambitions for here than have ever been set nationally, but we are achieving them. And what we need now, and I feel it's coming, is a government getting right behind us and to make this growth story go even further. And yes, then let's take it to Liverpool, Leeds and everywhere beyond, with transport at the heart of it. Transport policy was neglected for decades in this country until devolution came along. Now it's at the heart of everything. We've done that together because your voices have helped us as mayors to get it to that point. But let's turn it now into something real, which is the revitalisation of this city and all of the great cities of the UK. Thank you very much indeed.
It'll just be me. So, Andy, I mean, thanks. I mean, it's fantastic to hear, but also because it's not just about, you know, the sort of vision, it's the passion that comes with it and the drive and the energy that's needed to keep at it when sometimes those barriers are hard. And thinking about, you know, our conference colleagues who are here today, when you look back over those 10 years and you look forward, is there anything that you would give advice to other, you know, transport authorities, you know, officials who are here about going quicker? What thing would you have gone quicker with if you had your time again?
I would have gone quicker with getting control of the system. I think there was a nervousness here, and I know it was shared around other transport authorities, around the journey to reform of buses. And, you know, there was all of the kind of worries about the legal challenges and other things. Honestly, the quicker you've got control, the quicker you're in a position to shape the place where you live. Without that public control of public transport, you're not in control. Therefore, you can't, you know, set the ambitions that I've been talking about. So, you know, it's great that Liverpool on the same journey and about to put their first buses back under public control. Get control of the system is what I'd say to everybody. Use the power. Don't delay. It's critical. You can't have that growth in the economy, growth of people and places without it. It's as simple as that.
And before I let you go, I've got one last question, and I was really struck by what you talked about around, how transport growth is about that opportunity. Opportunity brings prosperity.
Yep.
Prosperity brings more opportunity. And you talked about, the 16 to 18 and that being an education policy. And when you think about the next 10 years of transport-led growth, what do you want to see on the skills agenda in the Greater Manchester area?
Well, I think the emergence here of an integrated public transport system, all under public control, is an opportunity for public transport careers to be presented to young people in a way that they haven't been for quite a long time. And that itself, I think, opens the possibility for Britain constantly then raising its game in terms of the quality of public transport, the people working within it, what it is to be in a public transport career. Simply, we are bringing forward now B network, T-level work experience placements, B network apprenticeships, and it means that a young person, we could say to a young person growing up in Greater Manchester now, if you go on this path, you can be a bus driver, then maybe a tram driver, then maybe a train driver. There's a progression there that makes sense, and we need, we all have struggled, I think, across the industry with those frontline roles, or in engineering, the same. You could make the same argument. I think the integration of public transport in a simple system allows, I think, a very different approach to the workforce, the public transport workforce of the future. And for us, it always should be a good employment option as well. So we inherited a situation where, through deregulation, when I retook control, the variable standards we had across the depots in terms of pay, terms and conditions, but also employment standards was quite shocking, actually. We took the decision here to link the process of franchising to the Greater Manchester Good Employment Charter. And actually, it really shaped the way that procurement developed, to the point where every single person out there driving a bus today in Greater Manchester has sick pay cover from day one. If you go back 6 years to the eve of the pandemic, that wasn't the case. And that isn't a good thing for those drivers or for the public if you have a frontline role where someone doesn't have sick pay cover. So I suppose what I'm saying, Colette, is the approach that we're taking here has got to be about it being good for everybody within public transport. And the thing I always kind of learn in my jobs through politics, particularly as health secretary, is if you look after the staff, you are looking after the patients or the passengers or whoever. And if you're not doing that, then you're not running a quality service, and it will show by people sort of walking away. Finally, in the first year of the B network, we reversed the decline in passenger numbers for the first time since the mid-1980s. And it is all about quality, isn't it? Raising our game as a country in terms of the public transport people encounter when they get off an aeroplane and come in from Manchester city centre. What we expect when we go to European cities, we've not had it here. Why aren't we a bit more embarrassed about that? Why aren't we allowed to say, no, absolutely going to raise our game. This should be a quality experience, easy to use, convenient, but also with staff who are properly paid, properly rewarded for what they do, which are difficult roles. And when I kind of remember taking over, I was really struck by how threadbare the system was in so many ways. And I think we're reversing that, but we're not where we need to be yet. And I do think you have to have a really good people strategy alongside your public transport bigger vision, because the quality comes through, the passengers start to follow, and you sort of get on a rising tide of improvement. And I don't think, if I'm honest with you, that culture has been there enough in public transport in this country over the last few decades.
Well, Andy, thank you so much for taking the time, leaving us with a message about how quality and connection with your community brings pride, and then also has got that really positive impact. And thank you for being not just a fantastic custodian for Manchester, but a standard bearer for devolved authorities and for mayors being able to make decisions that make a difference. And thank you.
Oh, thank you very much indeed, Colette. Thank you for listening, everyone.